Okay, as we get everyone logged in, I'm going to take a moment to share my screen here for just a little visual as we introduce our panel today and our event. So for those of you who I have not formally met, my name is Monique Hunt. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager for Let Us Entertain You Restaurants. And I am joined here with my partner in crime, Mr. John Simmons, our Chief Human Resources Officer. Wave to the people, John. Thanks. We're super excited to host all of you for our first virtual event that includes all of our leadership as well as our hourly employees. I'm super grateful that you're taking this time with us today to to listen in on this panel discussion and to meet a few of our community partners as well as one of my favorite chef partners that we have here in the company. This Black History Month event is based on a four-part docuseries on Netflix called High on the Hog: How African American Food Transformed America. It is an exquisite documentary that we'll talk over the next hour about in terms of how African American cuisine really created the foundation for American food. And the docuseries starts in Africa, transitions over into the Carolinas, up through the Mid-Atlantic, and rounds out in Texas. And throughout that docuseries, you get to meet some really incredible storytellers, including Stephen Satterfield, who is the host of all four parts of the documentary. And you get to learn about not only the food that was brought over from Africa, but the incredible ingenuity that a lot of enslaved people brought to the agriculture to develop that food on stateside. You get to learn about the stories of their family, the stories that of the land that they currently live on and that they've helped to develop. So it's a really exquisite series. If you haven't had the opportunity to see it, I highly recommend it if you are a Netflix subscriber, but yeah, you won't need that necessarily to follow along with today's conversation. With all of that said, you won't be able to see or hear it come off of mute, or you won't be able to engage directly with us by talking, but we do encourage you to use the chat function. If any of you have seen the series, please put in the chat either your favorite learning, your biggest aha moment. If there was a particular storyteller that really captured your attention, please put that in the chat. I will be following along throughout the duration of this hour, and I will be introducing those comments to our chef team and our chef panelists. And any questions that you may have, we will answer some of those throughout the 60 minutes that we're together. Certainly at the last 5 or 10 minutes, we will reserve time just for questions and comments for our panelists. So with that said, I want to turn it over to John to give those of you who are new to Lettuce, I know we have some of our community partners on the call today. Welcome from Urban Juncture. We're glad to have you. So you all are new to the DEI program framework, as well as some of the hourly employees who may not have heard some of the elements of engagement that we've been working through over the past year. So John, I will pass that off to you to do that introduction.
Super. Thank you, Monique, very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to everybody internally and our panelists and our external Urban Juncture team that also joined us today. I want to just talk really quickly about Lettuce's DEI mission. And if you haven't visited our page on the website at lettuce.com, you can get to our DEI mission right on the About Us page. Or dive a little bit deeper by going through the Culture of Caring page. And on there, it talks about this mission statement, which I'll just read for the sake of having it out there. So our DEI mission leads with our culture of caring, right? It's at the heart of everything we do, and it is enriched by the DEI program. Those are the three main factors of the DEI program that we focus on in the mission statement is the inspiration of our culture of caring to foster safe spaces where everyone feels free to be their full selves, to create restaurants and workplaces that look and feel like the communities where we live, work, and serve, and to remove obstacles so that everyone thrives. This notion of we've been bringing people together since 1971 kind of piggybacks on some of the other phrases that we've used internally in our marketing materials. And then this notion of come as you are, and we've set a special place just for you. So it's an opportunity just to provide people with the insight of the close tie between our longstanding culture of caring and kind of a renewed mission to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you go deeper into that site, you'll find how we define diversity and equity and inclusion at Lettuce. You'll also find how we engage. And we have 5 key pillars, which include our guests, our future talent, our business partners, but most importantly for today, our community partners and you, us, everyone on this call, the Lettuce teams, and engaging our internal talent today, as well as our community partners. And that's what we're going to focus on today through this discussion. What I'd like to do for now is just let our panelists introduce themselves. And if I may, Michael, I will pass the mic figuratively to you to introduce yourself, and then you can pass the mic on from there. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael Bonner. I've been with Lettuce Entertain You now. This is my 31st year with the company, and started with a restaurant called Maggiano's back in the early 90s, and had an opportunity to help, put that restaurant across the country. Came back to Lettuce. Well, the company sold, Lettuce sold Maggiano's to a company called Brinker International in the mid 90s. And my partner and I, Mark, stayed on board there, but came back to Lettuce and helped open another division that includes Serenello's restaurant in Wheeling, Deep Piscar in Northbrook. And we have 2 restaurants in the city, Ivy Room, Tree Studios. And I'm excited to participate with this today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. So thanks for having me on board.
Thanks, Michael. Miss Erica, can you share a little about yourself? And Erica, you are on there.
Yes. Hi, my name is Erica Durham. I too am a chef in a little bit of a different way now. I was executive chef of the executive of the Federal Reserve Bank for a number of years. I've become a wine and spirits scholar, so I get to learn by drinking, which is very fun. As you also see, I'm a part-time life of the party. Hope to make that full-time at some time in my life. I'm currently in the role of project lead with Urban Juncture, and we're creating this culinary incubator. It's called the Bronzeville Culinary Connection. And what we're doing is really just helping to bring a new focus and a highlight to Black cuisine and Black chefs. So I'm really happy to be here as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing, Chef. And next up, we have Chef Tiffany Williams. Welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Tiffany Williams, owner of Exquisite Catering and Events and Exquisite 501, a cafe in Chicago, located in the Woodlawn neighborhood. I always represent the South Side of Chicago. Very happy to do so. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, just over 20 years now. Everything from fast casual, fine dining, and most recently in backstage catering, where I'm currently on the road right now with Justin Bieber on tour as a chef. Back home, our cafe is still open, so if you get by there to support, we do have a team that's working really hard to provide good food for our neighborhood. We're also a licensed shared kitchen, so we host other cafes and small businesses, and we actually help them get licensed, get their sanitation licenses. Once a month, we host that class, and we help them get started with their business because we want to help bring resources to our community. So I know how hard it is to get started. I know how hard it is to get into a brick and mortar. So as much as we grow, we want that space to be there for the upcoming chefs. And so I'm really excited to be a part of that, understanding what, Black history means for me. It's really important to be a part of that. And mom of 3, mom of 3 great kids. And I like to play video games with them when I can. I live to learn to play video games.
That's crazy.
You can beat me if that makes you feel any better, Tiffany.
Yeah, I like when I beat the kids. That's even better.
That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Thank you and welcome to all of the chefs. And for those of you who may or may not know, I've gotten to spend quite a bit of time getting to know all three of these chefs in the past year. Our DEI program has been in the works about a year and a half. But the past year, really building connections with our community partners, building connections internally with Chef Michael and his team to help grow and develop new talent and to pipeline them into his stores. And a really big part of what I hope to accomplish, not only with this event, but with others that we may do in the future, is for you all to get to know them as well. The more that we know about our community partners and the better relationships that we can form with them, specifically with Urban Juncture, as we've got made these connections with Chef Erica and Chef Tiffany, it would be just an incredible opportunity for you all to reach out to them and to include them in your network and find out more about them and vice versa. So thank you and welcome. That said, to move into the discussion about the docuseries that we're all here to discuss today, as I mentioned before, High on the Hog, that 4-part docuseries, it debuted on Netflix last year, last May. And the host and one of the producers, Steven Satterfield, he is a bit of a jack of all trades, like some of our chefs that you see featured here. He is a chef, he is a sommelier, he is a business owner, author. And his identity currently in the workspace is as an origin forager. What does that mean? He is enamored with storytelling. He understands the power of storytelling and how his experience as a chef and sommelier and all things hospitality, he's really developed a passion for storytelling and particularly in the space of Black and African American cuisine, where it came from, who are the people who helped create it, where did these techniques come from, where did this food come from. He does a beautiful job throughout the series and through a number of podcasts and articles and on his website, which I will feature later in the program, telling the beginnings of where things come from and how things have come to be now. And speaking of origins, this docuseries was actually inspired by and engendered by a book and one of Steven Satterfield's mentors, Dr. Jessica B. Harris, culinary historian, author, professor. She wrote a book in 2012 called High on the Hog, Culinary Journey of African Food from Africa to America. She is the mentor to many of the big named and some of the lesser named Black culinarians throughout the United States. And she has done a tremendous, she pays tremendous respect from both the African perspective and the African American perspective on food and the origins of where it came from and how it came to be. So to start the conversation off with our panelists today, the first question that I really have for all of you is an experience that I had that caught me off guard. When I first heard about this series, I was super excited, and my intention and my plan was to just dive right in and binge watch it over the course of a weekend. That did not happen. For those of you who have seen the first episode, you'll recall that at the end of the very first episode, there is a rather deeply emotional experience that the host, Steven Satterfield, experiences as he quite literally is standing in the space and on the ground where many enslaved Africans began their journey to the Americans.
Amelia.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It is something that I think I said to you, John. You're not human if that doesn't pull at you to watch and experience that. And in all of that I experienced, I was like, ooh, we're not binge watching this. It's going to take all I can do to get through the entire series if this is what it's going to be. So it took me a few weeks to really get through all 4 episodes, despite the fact that they're only 45 minutes long. And so, starting with you, Michael, just how long did it take you to get through the process of watching those 4 episodes, and what sort of emotions came up for you, both the highs and the lows?
Well, my brother is an educator in Indianapolis who really encouraged that I see the show. And he called me and says, I'm coming up there. We're going to watch the show together. And The first episode was, a little bit emotional for me, but not to the point where it inhibited me from watching further. Those stories I know, about, how slavery started and, Black people leaving the country, coming to America. So I don't know that it took me until like further into the episode or the second episode of understanding the rice in the Carolina where it pulled on me a little bit. So yeah, I got through all four of the episodes pretty quickly. I actually watched it again last night to get a refresher, but those emotions I've known since, just for years, it was interesting to see it told through food.
Nice. Chef Erica, how about you?
I have to say, so I've seen it 3 times, and I've wept every time I've seen it when he wept, because if I could already feel emotional about it, it made me even more emotional imagining how he must feel being, standing right there. And, I'm big into like the energy of the ancestors. So I feel like he could feel their energy right in that moment. And so I wept really for myself. I wept for them and for him. It was very emotional for me, and I know the story as well, but again, I feel like even with the story itself is important and emotional, but then food, I believe, is important and emotional too. And so just with what I feel when I'm cooking, and certain things that I have to make in certain moments. My great grandmother, she worked for in the kitchen at Washington University, and she had her own name on a dish there. And every time, and my other grandmother, she taught me to cook when I was very small. And so every time I have to like really put my heart into it, I call on to them to just, ask for them for their support, their help, their love. And so it really it resonated with me when he was there in that moment.
I love it. Chef Tiffany, I see you smiling and nodding.
Yes, I am with Chef Erica on that, because if I'm asked to make the dressing, I'm talking to my grandma in heaven every time. Like, stay with me, grandma. Let's make it really good, just like yours. So, absolutely. The first episode, I ended up, my dad, bless him, he always sends me links to everything to watch. Like, check this out, check this out. He keeps me very engaged in the food and current scenes. And he said, you got to watch this, Tiff. And I watched the first episode in the late evening. And again, by the end, I'm weeping. I'm weeping because that moment, one, I love history. I love culture through cuisine. That's really, I guess I'd say that will be my heart for cooking. Learning about different cultures through different foods. It unlocks this space where we can all sit down and we can have conversations and not look at the person next to us and say we're different. We can just enjoy a meal and we can learn about differences through that meal. So this docuseries was amazing to watch. I watched the first episode one night, and the second day I got a chance to binge watch the rest. And that night I was making mac and cheese, and I switched my entire recipe. I actually did a reel on Instagram. I switched the entire recipe and made the recipe from the show. So I'm like, I gotta taste this, the way they cooked it. And it inspired me even more. I'm like, I gotta cook a hound and hog dinner. So we still want to do that at the cafe one day. So,
oh my goodness, yeah. That sounds incredible. Please make sure that is on every one of our calendars.
Absolutely. We actually have quite a few chefs that wanted to sign up for doing this. So I'm really excited when we get it started.
I love it. And thank you for sharing that connection of emotion and food and family. I think that's not something that's exclusive to Black people and Black cuisine. I think that's something that everyone can relate to. I think most people that I see on this call have referenced recipes that they have from their mother's cookbook or their grandmother or their aunt. Food is the great unifier, and it is a big reason why Stephen Satterfield wants to and feels pulled to tell stories through that medium, because it's something that everyone can relate to, whether the stories are positive or painful or everything in between. Thank you. John, I'll pass the mic to you.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, and thank you for letting me ask you all some relatively personal questions about like how you really feel about stuff. So I appreciate you letting me in that respect. Michael, you started it by talking about, yeah, so some of what you saw in episode 1 was already familiar to you, but starting diving in with episode 2 and the rice in the Carolinas, and there were a number of things throughout all 4 episodes where by the end, when I wrote his name down. His name was Bruno, and he was the trail boss for those cowboys, right? And he said, we have a rich history that has not been taught. And I think even for some of the folks on this panel, if you're learning some of those things in that series that are some pretty impactful, just kind of milestones for the enslaved people that came to America, for the African Americans that we followed, is just this notion of moving more earth than was moved to create the pyramids in Egypt, and what they did to bring rice farming to the US, and how dramatically that crop declined after the Civil War when that know-how wasn't available to them anymore, and how Martha Washington's recipes were not Martha Washington's recipes. So I'm just wondering, like, where do we, whether you're an African American or not, where do you learn this history today? What can we do to make this history be told? I don't know. Talk to me about that.
Well, I'll start. I felt like the question was directed towards me, but it was frustrating to watch for me, John, because a lot of that history I didn't know.
Right.
There was a lot of aha moments throughout the series that was shocking to me. The rice story in itself, both the chefs for Washington and Thomas Jefferson, Hercules and James Heming. The first catering company in America was opened by an African American. All these are like shocking, that we hadn't heard that. And I'm in the industry, and I've been in the industry for many years. So I think partially why we don't know of that is because it didn't fit the narrative of the United States. We have, this class of people who are, like you said, architectural brilliance and, a lot of know-how, hardworking, a lot of the credit was stolen. So that frustrated me. To answer your question about how we can get this into schools or into the information, I think first we have to accept the fact that Americans or African Americans in this country have contributed to what America is today. And we need to recognize that. And I think that, I don't know, I have mixed emotions about that. I was talking to someone a few days ago about what Black History Month means to me. And I honestly, as a young adult, I really never paid attention to it because society didn't make it important. Our culture doesn't make Black history important. And I think the more that we, discover these nuggets of truth, the nuggets of our history and our contributions, I think the more that we'll appreciate the efforts of African American in our past and even today.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, Tiffany or Erica, do you have anything to add, or Monique?
I would say for me, I was thinking about parts of really each episode, but especially when they were talking about some French influence in the first episode. And I feel like, yes, there's a lot of French influence in different cuisines, but there's a lot of African influence in different cuisines as well, and maybe even more so. It's heralded when it's, there's a French influence. There's, like a certain positivity and elegance, it's wonderful to have this. And I feel like it's more brushed aside when there's an African influence. But I mean, we're talking about in the Caribbean, in the Latin Caribbean area, in South America, parts of Mexico, really just so many places. And I really want to get to a place where African influenced foods are just as appreciated.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting that the co-opting of various cultural elements, whether it's music or other pop culture where suddenly things that are African or of African origins or from the African American communities are co-opted, and people just assumed they were white because they were stolen and popularized in a more mainstream way, perhaps by white people. I know Tiffany or Monique, anything to add? Or Monique, do you want to move to the next? It's up to you.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanted to say
Please.
that as far as the history goes, outside of school, I don't think there's enough history taught, African American history. It has to be really intentional. I think we have to get a lot more intentional. We're really far behind on teaching when it comes to history. And like Michael said, as a young adult, you're not as engaged. As a young adult, I wasn't as engaged, but more and more, if I see something that is storytelling about our history, I'm like, let me watch it. Just last night, I learned about Rideau Wine here in LA and their capacity of being the first Black winemaker, having the first Black vineyard here in LA, and the impact that they've made. So I'm enjoying learning about history. I think we have to make it mandatory in our homes. And really, really talk about the contributions of what African Americans bring to the plate. I love that someone mentioned behind the scenes. Chefs and the food is usually behind the scenes. And a lot of us actually like to stay behind the scenes. We don't want to be the front runner. But I love that we're now becoming more shining, and that we're coming to the forefront, and that the stories can be told a little bit more.
I know Erica and Michael, neither was nervous about being on screen today. So
excuse me, I am an ambivert. I'm only an extrovert when it is convenient.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well,
Go
John,
ahead.
to your point though, for me, my experience up until today and in this moment, I've shared a little with Michael, Black History Month, it definitely means to me, it's not that it means more to me now, but I feel more of a responsibility to amplify and to educate myself and others when given the opportunity. But there's always been a lot of trauma around Black History Month for me. I grew up in predominantly white spaces. I've worked in predominantly white spaces, and all I ever wanted to do was just get through it. Let me just get through it, because you feel like everyone's eyes are on you, and it's like, I don't have all the answers. I don't know all this stuff. And times when you try really hard to fit in, all of a sudden that's those 28 days, the white hot light is on you. So there's always elements of discomfort for me during this specific time. But like I said, I know that I have at this age, and I think a lot of things come with age. You realize the responsibility, and when you have the platform and microphone to elevate and amplify incredible work that is often left behind the scenes, and that, to quote Stephen Satterfield, the erasure of Black people and the erasure of Black culture, it's a form of violence. And I feel, there's just more responsibility to push against that, and to offer spaces like this to shine a light on people and cultures that deserve it. So yes, by all means. And John, I know that you also had another question regarding the gentleman who was featured, Ben Harney in New York.
Yeah, mostly I just like to say real mother shucker. So that's why I want to ask this question. So maybe I'll just start with Erica, because we did have an opportunity to talk about this briefly last week. So Ben Harney was the guy's name. He's the one who has the oyster cart in Brooklyn. And he raised the cultural view of some Black Americans that says, we don't do that. We don't eat that. That's not our thing, right? So, and he disagreed with that, saying there's nothing we don't do. There's nothing that's not our thing, is how he put it. So from everybody's perspective, like you said, we can start with Erica. Is it important for any group, any historically marginalized group, to in some ways maintain its own unique culture or subculture, call it what you want? How do you balance that while at the same time this eternal desire, subconscious, to be part of the mainstream, to be accepted in full, and this notion of America, if our culture as Americans is a melting pot, which is one thing that is uniquely American, how does that match with a group of diverse folks who are trying to maintain some of that identity that I know as a gay guy, I hold on to my subculture a lot sometimes, right? And all my life, I just wanted to be perceived as normal and accepted as normal. And now in the gay bars, there are straight people. They happen to be largely straight women because straight guys are afraid of gay bars and what it might do for their reputation. But I start to feel like others have now invaded my space. So I don't know, like, how do you balance what Ben Harney was fighting, which is we don't eat oysters. Oysters aren't our thing. Well, shut up. Everything's our thing. There's nothing that's not our thing. I don't know. What do you think, Erica?
I mean, I feel like I feel like the African American influence in food is somewhat stigmatized. So people think that it's nothing really to be proud of. And it is. And I feel like we have to, as Black people first, accept our food and what our contributions have been. And then we can be open to sharing that. And I have no problem sharing it. I'm one of the straight women in the gay bar.
And you're welcome here.
Thank you. I feel like it's all about really respect and just general, I mean, like genuine interest. If it's kind of like Juneteenth, where there's this struggle of, okay, do we want people to know about Juneteenth? Because they just kind of found out about Juneteenth after George Floyd. It was just miraculously like this brand new holiday that's been around for many, many years, as we know. But I think it's about the holding it tight so it's not commercialization. Just like I feel like Kwanzaa, you know, I grew up celebrating Kwanzaa as a child and learning and it's all about the principles that you learn. And that's the real root of it. So I think it's a similar thing with Juneteenth, where I'm big into bringing people in, but you got to show the respect. And I know a lot of times, because Black food has been stigmatized, or we feel like we have to only like one thing. So I think it was Chef Omar Tate, that said, you know, we have all these contributions because oysters are our thing. We have a rich history in shucking those mother shucking oysters. I said that right? Yeah. So it's just about, again, accepting ourselves and then taking that next step to accept our full selves.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts on that subject?
Yes. So, old story, going to culinary school so many years ago. The first question I was asked was, "Oh, are you going to open a soul food restaurant?" And I was always offended because I said, "Why do I have to open a soul food restaurant? We eat soul food at home every day. I want to teach you about something different." And so my kind of play on it was, I wanted to introduce you to different cultures. I love authentic, be you, be who you are. When I come to your home, I have a lot of friends who are Mexican, and when I come into their home, they're like, "Tiffany, you're Mexican. You eat like us, you talk like us," you know, because it's authentic and I feel what they feel. So I would treat the same coming into my home. But then coming up in the culinary industry, because Black food wasn't as highlighted as other foods, I stayed away from cooking soul food as much. It almost feared me to cook soul food because, one, there's a lot of judgment around soul food. You know, if it doesn't taste like your aunties or your grandmas, you know, that you may not want to make it. So I shied away from cooking soul food for a very long time until I just said, you know what, I make great food. It's going to be amazing. And I'm really confident about anything I cook. But yeah, I think because it hasn't been kind of set as this standard highlighted food, like a French, you know, classic French cuisine or any other food, you know, it kind of got lost and put to the back. Like you don't see many upscale or fine dining soul food places, even doing a catering menu, you know, and we're like, "Oh, we have a plate of soul food dinner." They're like, "Wait, what? You plate soul food?" Yes, we do, because it should be plated as well.
Well, you know, speaking to, you know, even the stereotypes, so you're in culinary school and the assumption is, oh, you're Black and you are going to go the soul food route. You know, this, I think sometimes first of all, we all have biases, and sometimes we fall into those stereotypes. But I think you all would know way more than I do, because I'm not a chef. How do those stereotypes hold back Black chefs who may not be at the level that you are? Because I fear that those stereotypes of, well, they're Black, they only know soul food. They don't know about, you know, how to cook with and work with high-end products. They wouldn't necessarily be a fit in a high-end restaurant. They only cook and know soul food. How have those stereotypes either affected you or people who you've seen coming up trying to get to levels that you're at?
Well, I like to start. I guess for me personally, I didn't want to limit myself. I didn't want to limit myself to be stuck in this one genre of what I've cooked. And so I always said, people be like, what are your favorite things? I say, well, I cook international cuisine. I cook a little bit of everything. I love history. I love learning. I actually am doing what I'm doing on the road to learn because I'm cooking with people from all over the world. So every day I'm learning something new and advancing myself and my skill set. So I encourage chefs to learn things outside of what what they're comfortable with, to be a little more versed in what they're doing. It just unlocks so many more possibilities instead of feeling like you're stuck in this box. And I appreciate people who are masters in their craft. It's not to take anything away from someone who's like, this is what I do, this is my cuisine, this is what I do great. I just found, for me personally, I wouldn't be able to do things like what I'm doing right now today if I just stuck to one cuisine, one style.
Thank you. And John, I know you had a question for the group in regards to some of the innovation that was discussed in episode 2.
Yeah, we talked about it already a little bit when we talked about the Carolina Gold Rice and some of the other the catering industry that Michael raised from that episode. Do these, when you hear about these stories of kind of at least firsts, for what it's worth, in America, do they inspire the work that you do as an entrepreneur? Do they inform it? How does it influence you to learn about these stories?
Michael, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to the last point that we were making as everyone was talking about, just being typecast in a particular cuisine, or, running away from, the title only being known for cooking fried chicken or perhaps barbecue. I think, for me, my culinary journey, I've always looked outside of our cuisine to understand how to cook, and as food has evolved in this country, or the acceptance of food in different cuisine has evolved in this country, I find myself feeling guilty that I don't know enough of, how to cook soul food, and you get a little embarrassed when, someone can cook fried chicken better than you. And I'm going through that process now and understanding, what that looks like for me as I continue to evolve as a chef. Secondly, I think the question was about inspiration behind some of the innovation and the resiliency of some of the African-American chefs, or the beginning pioneers of agriculture in this country. It's a tough thing to absorb. I don't know if I find, or to explain, I should say. I don't know if inspiration is the first thought. The first thought for me is like, wow, look at that. I had no idea. I just recently found out that, the creator of, Deep Dish Pizza in Chicago was an African-American woman. That story inspired me. I was like, wow, we're good enough that we created a dish that is so iconic in the city. But
the world, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just now discovering that. So it's a kind of a mixed emotion, John, as far as just understanding how to feel about it. I'm inspired by the fact that yes, it is possible that we are capable of like creating and doing great things. It's possible, and I'm inspired of everyone who goes and have been generations before me have put effort into creating a better life for us today and generations to come, and that inspires me.
Awesome.
Agreed. And to Shannon's point in the chat, she mentioned there's a gentleman in episode 2. I forget his name, and thank you for putting it in here. There's a white gentleman who is currently operating a rice, a business that is helping to cultivate the property and the land to produce rice, which was huge in Charleston during the height of the transatlantic slave trade. And it's a family-owned business, and this gentleman is still able to operate that, but in doing it in a way that he deems most respectful. He is donating the seeds, basically anybody who asks for it internationally. So while he is turning a profit, Shannon, I agree with you that I wasn't super satisfied with his answer to Stephen Satterfield's question. How do you reconcile, making a profit off of something that, quite frankly, caused so much pain for an entire generation of people? And, to your point, Michael, the stories have not been told of, the woman who was inventing deep dish pizza. The stories aren't told of the enslaved people who, quite frankly, brought their ingenuity to the States to create the wealth of Charleston and the entire South. So having those mixed emotions, I get it. I feel it with you. And I don't know that it has to be all or nothing. You can feel good about it, or you can have to feel angry or sad about it. I think there's room for the complexity of emotions, and kudos to you, Shannon, for doing some research and doing your own thought process of how do you feel about it, because it's complicated, and I think it will always be complicated. And for a question that I wanted to move forward, a question that I wanted to dive deeper in with Erica, Chef Erica. I know earlier you mentioned that you cook from your heart, and you cook with passion, and you channel the ancestors when you are creating. You and Chef Tiffany both visited that in your opening. And I was curious to know if you or any of the chefs here had any thoughts on in the episode in which they were Stephen Satterfield visited New Zion Missionary Church in Texas, speaking to the importance of the relationship of the Black church to the Black community, up to the community in general, and how food factors into that. I know I definitely felt very nostalgic, and it was literally took me back to my childhood, having the barbecue stand literally right outside of our church room door. Can you share a little about your thoughts on that?
I feel like that's, am I echo? I feel like that's part of, at least that's been part of my experience. And I always feel like food is, I look at it as nostalgia. And that's kind of how I approach it, is as nostalgia. I want you to feel something. I want you to remember something. I want you to be there again. I want to be there, you know what I mean? And like kind of transport you in a way. And so, yeah, that resonated with me, because when you hear these stories, then you think about, oh, I went to my great grandmother's church a long time ago when I was a little girl. And, after church, they'll sell like plates of food in the basement. And I mean, that really, again, that took me back to my childhood. There were so many moments in the entire series that I could really remember parts of my own personal history, and that made me feel connected.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And for anybody on the call who may or may not know, there's ritual and routine on Sundays in the Black community when it comes to church. And Tiffany, I see you smiling. From it's a much earlier wake up call than most like to get the outfit and the hair and the whole thing, because it's a see and be seen experience as much as it is a spiritual experience. But as mentioned before, the behind the scenes, while everyone is seeing and being seen in church, behind the scenes, there are faces and names that you'll probably never know who are cooking up some of the best food that you can imagine, putting it in a styrofoam box with a slice of white bread to sop up the sauce. That's how it works.
And asking a famous question, who made that?
Who made that?
It's potato salad.
Who made potato salad?
John, we have time, John. I'm putting you on the spot. You can share the story of learning about the cookout. I explained, John.
Y'all are laughing because you know this was not easy for me. No, but let me, before I go there, Monique, I just want to share with watching you all and your emotion. Like, I'm insanely jealous. And this is not about me, but like, I had no community for my historically marginalizedness until I was 28 years old. Right. So it's just like, embrace that, love that. It's so cool for me to see that in all of you, and whatever other kind of troubles that come with just plainly with your identity, like how joyous to have that. And that goes back to our earlier question about embracing our own culture and how much it means to us, and why some people don't understand why we need special attention for groups that are historically marginalized. It's not everybody's equal or all lives matter. There is a difference in a good way. So no, Monique, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm not, because
John, you're invited to the cookout.
Thank you.
I don't know, John. I got a few more questions first before you invite.
Thank you, Erica.
You're cool. You're cool.
I
got to delve a little further first.
You said it earlier, which is you're invited as long as you pay respect, right?
There
as long
you go.
as you do it respectfully, as long as you're inquisitive, you're sincerely curious, and you're open-minded, and you're non-judgmental, and that's the joy, and that's why you can come to Show Tunes at Sidetrack with me on Sunday, Erica.
And if you can dance, that's a bonus. That's a bonus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll take you up on the Sidetracks, and I have been there.
For those who may not understand the cookout or the barbecue reference, maybe a year or so ago, I don't know how it comes to be, but there's a thing in Black culture, specifically here in the United States. There's a cookout. Like, what do Black people cook out? We barbecue. That's just what we do, and everybody understands the references in the Black community of what that means. Speaking to Chef Tiffany's point and Chef Erica's point, every Black cookout that you ever go to anywhere in your life, who made the potato salad? You will get that question every single time. Who made, or at the church, who made the potato salad? Who did the sauce? It's ritualistic. It is cultural. I don't know where it comes from, but it's not Northern. It's not Southern. It's just part of Black culture. And as to Chef Erica's point, anybody can come to a Black cookout as long as you're respectful, and there will be, you're not going to be able to make a potato salad on the first shot. You're going to have to really earn that.
But am I right? Come to mean, can you be trusted? Are you invited to the barbecue? Can you be like yeah.
Exactly.
And one tip, John, no raisins. Go
anywhere.
Potato salad.
I wouldn't have thought about it. So you're good.
Don't put your own twist on it, okay?
Yeah.
Well, with that said, John, I'll let you round up with the last question here, and then we'll get to some questions in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. So there, we talked earlier about when Stephen Satterfield was in Ouidah in Benin, where 1 million plus enslaved folks were kidnapped and brought to the Americas. And in his emotion, he thanked the people who didn't make it, whether it was because they resisted at the port or they didn't survive the journey. But he also gained strength on what he called the second half of the story. And Michael, you mentioned it already when you talked about resilience. And this desire to look at the African-American experience as not one of victims, but as kind of resilient, courageous survivors. And that's something I'm just curious if you all are willing to share, kind of, because I think it can be emotional, is this tie between a distinction and between victim and survivor. Does that resonate with you today?
Yes, I mean, totally resonates with me. And I think, part of the story of, a lot of what I grew up in church was a story of hope, hoping for, equal rights, hoping for opportunity, hoping for doors to open. And I think and I can only imagine, being a slave or being enslaved in a situation, the amount of determination that's required to like hope for freedom, hope for, an opportunity for the next generation. So I think that that's that level of resilience, that level of determination, that level of like, that's inspiring to me, John, to answer your question. I mean, I can only imagine having those hurdles in front of you and then tomorrow show up and whatever the task is and to put your best into it. That's an incredible story to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
For Tiffany, what you got?
This one definitely was a personal question that I often hear when people hear my story. They say, wow, you're very resilient. You just don't stop. You just don't give up. You just keep moving no matter the adversary. And honestly, I've always looked at it as survival. It's always felt like, if I don't have the resources, I have to try to get them as much as possible. My kids inspire me a lot. And, I'll tell a quick story from the pandemic. The start of the pandemic, it came down to, we lost everything like many people did, especially in this industry. And, I had a conversation with them. I said, it's the realest talk I'm ever going to have with you guys in your life. We have to come out on the other side of this. We have to survive this. And it's going to take everything we got. And you guys got to give me more because I'm going to give you everything. And just teaching them to be resilient at that time.
How old are your kids, Tiffany? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, my son is at 21. My daughters are 18 and 13. So I'm blessed that they're at the ages they are now because they really help mom out a lot. But, just teaching them, no matter what the situation is, you have to move forward. You have to have faith that things are going to work and it will. So while people see resilience in me, I see we've always survived,
I would say for me, I think about it, just being in this industry. And, when I first graduated from culinary school and, I was continuing on and rising in the industry, I really hardly ever saw any women or Black people, and especially there were no Black women. And I think, for me, it just kind of like, I would have these frustrating times and I would have these moments when I felt overlooked, passed over, ignored, disrespected a lot. And, as bad as I felt for myself, I kind of used it as a way to check myself because I have to remember just like who I come from, where I come from, and how strong and resilient they must have been. Like what I'm going through right now is so trivial and nothing. So I use that as a way to motivate myself because I have to be successful. I have to reach these heights that they did not have the opportunity to reach. And that's kind of like a personal responsibility. So I just have to like tell myself to shut that down sometimes and remember what really I need to do.
Thank you all.
Chef Erica, I couldn't, well, all of you, but specifically to your last point, couldn't agree with you more. It is the fuel that gets me into a platform like this and pushes me forward to tell the stories of such accomplished chefs and those whose names and faces that we will never know. That's the fuel behind it. And to be able to amplify all of you and the work that you do, the shoulders that we all are standing on today in this moment, that's what it is. That's what it's about. And on these last few minutes here, I will put up some information on how all of you can be reached. As bear with me if I figure out the way to use my machine here, so that all of the panelists here will have some time. All of our attendees can find ways to connect with the panelists that we have here today. This is where you can find them on social media platforms for those of you who are engaged, or you can feel free to reach out to me or John directly to get their contact info. But just as we round out here with a few minutes, I just want to address a question that we have from Nancy Kalis joining us from our accounting team. Hello, Nancy. She's got a question for anyone on the panel. Does soul food have to be exclusively served at 100% soul food restaurants? Can that food be showcased in other styles of restaurants?
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I always say, because like Chef Tiffany, much of my career has been built on what they call fusion cooking.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people don't do it properly because you have to really respect the culture. That's the first thing you have to do, is respect the cultures of the foods that you're fusing, learn
Origins.
what their flavors are, their flavor, and then you can merge them together. I feel like it's the same thing. Why can't we be part of fusion?
Explain barbecue spaghetti.
Is that a question?
You brought it up, you explain it.
You're the professional, Michael.
I just think that's a good example of, African soul food fusing with Italian, which is, I always find it.
Oh, yeah. Like fish and spaghetti, like what Stephen
spaghetti.
Sutfield said.
Yeah.
I mean,
that wasn't
that's a fish fry to me, fish and spaghetti.
Yeah.
And to Nancy's point, I mean, we're two that are already on menus. Look at a catering menu. Some catering menus have an Italian style selection, a Mexican style selection, the Caribbean style collection, and then a soul food. So I don't understand why more people aren't putting soul food on their menu, unless they just know how to make it, which is very respectable.
I feel like we deserve a seat at the table because we probably built that table, We built the table.
Staying true to the authenticity.
I worked in corporate. Yeah, I worked in corporate, and our highest selling week was the soul food week. So let's keep it on the menus.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that respect and authenticity, and if you're going to do it right, and go to the source of the people who know the stories, who know those origins, again, which is the thing that fuels Stephen Satterfield and why he not only wanted to be a part of this documentary, which is going to have a second part. I believe they're thinking that it's going to be released next year, but there will be a High on the Hog part 2 for those of you who are Netflix subscribers, because he's only really scratched the surface with that storytelling. And I know myself, and we'll all be anxious to watch that. So with that said, I know we are coming up on time, and I'm super, super gracious to all of the chefs here, Chef Michael, Chef Tiffany.
Erica had her hand raised.
Can I just say one last thing about this fusion thing?
Yeah.
I was thinking about, everyone's like, I love kale. But you know what you can use instead of kale that's just as nutritious, in some ways more nutritious, is collard greens.
Collard greens. I knew you were going there.
and my favorite dad joke, or one of them, which is, do you know that you can mix kale? If you mix it with coconut oil, it makes it easier to scrape it off and put it in the trash. Sorry.
Wow.
Don Simmons, America.
We'll be here all week. Well, actually, we'll be here for maybe 10 more minutes.
No, but seriously, thank you all for your time today, and for sharing your personal stories, for sharing your emotions, because, like we've discovered, this is an emotional topic. Food evokes emotions and the stories of this particular docuseries and the book that inspired it. That's what it's all about. So thank you for joining us. Everybody who registered for this event, you will soon, I won't put a time on it, but you will soon get a list of resources from all of the storytellers that were in the docuseries. I've got a list of all of those people who were involved and some links to articles, social media posts that you will be able to check out and find some more information on them. It's very insightful. I did that kind of selfishly, but I thought I'd share it with all of you as well so that you can learn more. And again, for those of you who are super into social media, it gives you a whole new perspective to start incorporating people who are different from you into your feeds. So with that said, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time, and we will see you around town. And again, thank you to the Urban Juncture team for joining us as well from the South Side.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yes,
for having us.
It was fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.